Perfect. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to share some information about the work that they're doing in Colorado, and then we'll open it up for some additional conversation.
Thank you, Lindsay. I have to say, I'm not sure I've witnessed anyone in the last 3 years successfully talk, introduce, and navigate Google Meets. So you're not alone, you're in good company. We just haven't realized we can't do both at the same time. I'm Lisa Schluter, as Lindsay mentioned. I currently work at the new Colorado Department of Early Childhood. We became a department July 1 of 2022. So we just had a birthday. That's just very exciting for us. I sit in the Early Childhood Mental Health Unit. We have a handful of programs and offerings that are standard and some that have been sort of responsive to community or the pandemic or stimulus funds. So Lisa Schluter, she, hers. I oversee, like I said, that unit as the unit manager. We have very limited time together in terms of content, but that's a good thing because I want you all to ask questions. So I'm going to probably throw a fair amount of information at you in 5 to 6 minutes, but then we have the rest of the time to chat. So I'm going to go high level. If you want details, you want to get in the weeds, wonderful. You want to stay broad, that's also an option. This is choose your own adventure. All right, Lindsay, next slide, please. So Colorado has a strong history in the early childhood mental health space. We kicked off in early 2000 through a variety of projects, including Project Launch and Project Bloom. We ran a pilot for consultation very early on, and as early as 2007, we had a statewide program. That program was fairly small. We placed 1 full-time FTE at each community mental health center. That's how we distributed them across catchment areas in the state of Colorado. We have 64 counties, just for reference, and 17 community mental health centers. So that was our start. We have since expanded, but between recent events, so thinking about the pandemic, as well as being fortunate to receive the PDG B5 award in 2020, and then some recent legislation. So House Bill 20 passed 1053, 3 years ago now. That's hard to believe. And Senate Bill 21, 2 years ago. So in the recent years, the consultation program in particular has gone through a lot of enhancements. 1053 specifically calls out that although, as I mentioned, we'd have a program for the last 13 years, that we really dig deeper and flesh out some of those workforce qualifications, recommend caseloads, build out a more robust data system so that we can engage in a full evaluation. So then in 2021, Behavioral Recovery Act. So that's about the broadest possible title there could be for legislation. It's about 100 pages long, but we do show up in there, and it essentially adds money back to 1053 that was removed because of the pandemic, and allows us to invest in a third-party evaluator, some of that cost modeling and other pieces that really need that external capacity that just does not sit in most state systems. So I'll talk a little bit more about those for anybody who's really interested in getting into the nitty-gritty of what our Colorado model looks like, but otherwise I'll move into the high-level overview. One more, please. All right, so the basics of our program: it is no cost. It is, of course, a voluntary program, so no one is required or signed up for consultation. They can only enroll themselves. It is adult focused, so like all early childhood mental health, children, infants exist within a relationship, and so our services are really focused on building the adult's capacity to support the child's social, emotional, and developing mental health. Our population is birth to 6, including the prenatal period, and that is for any setting. So we have historically served early care and learning settings, so thinking about our licensed care, but libraries, pediatricians' offices, FFN, family child care homes, parents who are not involved in care and perhaps are stay at home, or a grandparent with a child, all equally eligible to receive consultation services. We do offer all 3 service levels, so I'm sure you have heard quite frequently the child focused, which is really still an intervention with the adult, who's caring for that child, but really focused on a child who may be at risk or otherwise identified as needing more prevention, and addressing possibly some behaviors that that adult finds challenging, or being connected to additional resources. And then we have classrooms to really think about classroom management, teaching strategies, inclusivity, transitions, visual schedules, all of the things from top to bottom, including peer relationships. How do you get along with your staff teacher? Are there workshops or professional development we can provide? And then we also offer program levels. So thinking big picture, how do we change the climate, not just of the classroom or an individual relationship, but of the entire organization? So working with that director one-on-one to set policies and procedures, to really enhance their skills for working with staff, engaging families successfully, offering parent or staff workshops and training, reflective supervision. So program goes broad, and we try to incentivize that one as much, but as you all are probably fairly familiar, we get called for child focus. There's a child at risk or otherwise has a concern, that's when people reach out, and then we usually try and roll services up so that we can get more return on investment when you're working with that adult to generalize those strategies and skills to children that come in and out of their care or their second sibling, whatever that might look like for an adult becoming a grandparent. We hope that that capacity sticks. And then the last thing, which was also covered by subject matter experts, is really thinking about what it means to be a qualified workforce. We happen to have license eligible master's level mental health that can come for a variety of degrees. They are required to have or be working towards an infant and early childhood mental health endorsement. We happen to be fortunate in Colorado to have our own AIM. And then we offer a variety of ongoing professional development in the space of cultural, racial, and linguistic competencies, reflective practice, and consultative stance. So again, I can provide more information on that, but we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. As I mentioned, we cover all 64 counties. So in 2007, we started with 17 FTE. We went to our legislators and doubled that to 34 in 2017, and then stimulus funds along with PDGB $5 really allowed us to continue to expand. So right now, as of today, we have 52 FTE serving 64 counties on 21 teams. That is a mix of community mental health centers and early childhood councils. So across the years, we have had some differing appetite in terms of whether the mental health center wants to host the program or if they think it would be better fit at an early childhood council. Next slide, please. All right. A few years ago, we introduced online referral. So consultants, as I'm sure you're aware, spend a lot of time in the field working with clients. They're not necessarily picking up their phones or responding to emails. So we tried to reduce some of the burden on them overall for data entry and create 24/7 access through our state website, allowing clients or potential clients to submit a request for services, any of those levels, fully English and fully Spanish online referral. And then through the preschool development grant, we launched a support line. So this is staffed by qualified consultants who work half-time in the field. They also answer the phone Monday through Friday from 10:30 to 5:30. We always get the question, why not nights and weekends? And the answer is we have zero data to know when anyone would call at all. So we started with when consultants were already working and committed to looking at the data and revisiting the hours based on when we're getting voicemails or actual traffic on the line. This is a method to submit a referral, but it is also a method to get on-demand support. So as I mentioned, everyone answering the phone is a qualified consultant, so they can troubleshoot, brainstorm, connect you to the right resource. So if we have someone call who's 7, then we sort of look up their county, save their local team that effort, and connect them right away. So we really do focus on that warmth and responsiveness, non-judgmental. It's one of our best points of entry for an experience. Next slide, please. We have a ton more information on our landing page. Mental health starts early. We also have a Spanish version. You can find our program flyer there in English and Spanish, as well as our frequently asked questions. Our state instructional design team created a course working with an early childhood mental health consultant. 60 minutes. Providers get credit for it, and it really helps them contextualize what to expect and how to prepare to work with a consultant. And then most recently, just a couple months ago, we issued a family experience as well as a director and teacher experience. So these 3 to 4 minute videos are essentially testimonials that really illustrate what the process looks like and helps shape that narrative away from firefighting to prevention and promotion, and really thinking about those levels without getting into the weeds for our clients, but really saying, you know, if you focus on program and the director works with the consultant directly, the yield for your staff, for your families, and for those children you serve will be multifold. Versus one child at a time and focusing on the idea that perhaps the child brings the problem rather than how you can create an environment that welcomes the child and supports any trauma they may have experienced, delays, connects them to screening, and creates a classroom environment and a program environment that welcomes them so they can be healthy, valued, and thriving. All right, next slide. I'm gonna transition a little bit. We have 2 other standing programs. These are much newer. So next slide, please. Incredible Years has been in Colorado for 20 years. The state picked it up and expanded its access in 2019. There are a variety of ways that you can offer Incredible Years. The state of Colorado opts to do all 3. This is based on the appetite of the folks holding the contract, but we wanted to make sure that parents, classroom teachers, as well as kids were all getting that direct contact and social emotional information. If they wanted it and they had demand, they could be responsive. Next slide, please. All right, and then Child First. This is our newest. This launched from a partner in 2020. So right as the pandemic was happening, they opened 4 sites, which is the requirement. You have to have 4 fully staffed, fully functional, fully committed sites for Child First to come to your state. Our partners worked to get that to happen, and 3 weeks later we were in lockdown. So they carried that work on valiantly alone and continued to serve people, launch an online referral. They've had great traction, and with stimulus funds we were able to pick up and expand. So if you are not aware, Child First is a home visiting program, so it goes directly into the homes of families in Colorado. It serves both the child and the adult, so it's a didactic intervention. It is actually treatment. They use child-parent psychotherapy. They administer a number of measures. They try and alleviate family history of trauma, as well as mental health concerns. So they provide treatment to the child, to the adult, and to the dyad. It's fairly intensive, it's expensive, teams go in too, but it really has a flexibility and meets a need that none of our other programming does. So there are no restrictions in terms of having only one child or living in a certain community, but it is pretty flexible as compared to other home visiting. It is the only one that goes into a home and provides clinical treatment. We do not have any other mental health clinical treatment at the state of Colorado. When I say that, I mean in early childhood. We of course have a behavioral health administration, but where we sit, this is our only mental health treatment. And we just, if you go to the next slide, I think that's the map. Oh, one more. We just kicked off a bunch of new sites. So your chat box may be blocking the summer and fall counties, but we just added through stimulus funds, we were able to match our partners and expand access to, we gotta count, 4, 10, 11 counties, additional counties, which we're super excited about. And we'll be able to report out on more at the end of this fiscal year, but it has been going strong, has been really well received. It will not surprise folks to know that there are some retention issues with high-risk families, with multi-generations living in the same home and possibly moving in and out of counties with service. All right, next slide, please. We have a bunch of other stuff going on that I did not touch on at all. So we are, like many states, trying to build our workforce. So career awareness and workforce development are huge. We are applying stimulus funds to invest in recruitment, retention, and recognition strategies. We often have our workforce report that they stumbled upon a job post and didn't know what it was, but they were qualified. In 5 years, we would like for our higher ed students who are going through, or others in the community who have been working in this area for a while, to know that this is something they could pursue and take advantage of some of these strategies to continue to build our pool of qualified candidates, so that when we can expand our program, we have staffing. We also used our stimulus dollars to invest in Conscious Discipline and Pyramid Colorado. These have been freely available. People can engage with them without the state, but we made a further investment to make sure there was really a continuum and menu of accessible resources in a different format and variety. We also expanded our Incredible Years and offered Seedlings Workshop, which is a trauma-informed training for parents and families. And then innovative service delivery. So I mentioned the support line. We also have statewide brief consultation. So this is, I can answer that if anyone is interested, but we have a small metro located team that can essentially be dispatched to other parts of the county to make up for capacity issues due to FMLA, turnover, new hire, natural disaster, other things that may occur that create fluctuations that the team cannot handle. We can reduce wait lists to make sure that there's timely access. So we have been piloting that for the last year with really good success, and we don't know if we'll keep it yet. Next slide. I think that's all. So those are just details on those particular efforts if anybody wants numbers and outreach. I definitely think I exceeded my 6 minutes, so we'll move to questions.
All right, that was a lot of content. Are there any questions for Lisa on any of the efforts she presented on? How about some of the things you're working on in your application? Does anything kind of connect to what Lisa's working on? Are you doing similar things? Are you exploring other environments for ECMH support?
So I'm currently going through for the endorsement. So the main thing is just trying to find training so that once I am endorsing, I'm already helping providers, both family child care homes and in the centers. So I think the main thing is anytime you can find trainings on mental health, just putting things in your toolkit to make sure that you're staying current or relevant, especially after COVID. A lot of things with our agency, they're getting calls or caseloads, especially for healthy social behaviors, because they're not knowing how to get the kids kind of back into the swing of things now that things are transitioning, although some may say it's never really changed, but to some degree, you know what I mean? We don't know their trauma at home and et cetera. So just staying abreast with any relevant information or tools that can help to bring more awareness.
Yeah, and Lisa, you've done a lot of work with that awareness piece, right?
Yeah, we've tried really hard to make sure that folks both have the awareness of, even babies have mental health, existing relationships, and operationalizing, making friends and solving problems, to take that imagery of a small child off a couch. It's not a Freud situation. But in terms of trainings, I 100% hear that. And one thing that we have done is we launched a newsletter, but very specific to the program. So keeping our workforce abreast, not just of Colorado training opportunities, which we tried to create as many as possible, but contracting, availability, all difficult, making sure that we feature other states, the Center of Excellence, and really encourage all of our workforce to sign up for those listservs. So if they weren't getting them, that it comes directly to, so that's their part of their onboarding, was we have them sign up for like 0 to 3 Center of Excellence. Michigan, a handful that put out a lot of free or low or no cost training. So yeah, we haven't heard problems with people filling their portfolio to renew on endorsement, but everyone does struggle with making the time to continue to make sure that their portfolio is eligible.
For us in Hawaii, we're not quite there yet. I don't think we even have a we might have mental health centers. And with respect to PDG, I'm thinking about some of the things that you have been able to do. Right now in my mind, I'm thinking more in terms of how do I get this RFP out? Like, what is the scope specifically we're looking at? And I think I might need to go back and talk to more people, because we do have aim high, but they're not connected to any state agencies, so then we can't really directly just contact them. And then there's also our Department of Human Services is contracting Department of Health to work on mental health issues, so that we're not sort of stepping on, or I should say the PDG is not stepping on that RFP. So I'm kind of waiting on that RFP to go through so that that can be kind of established. And so I'm like, oh boy. So that's where for me, it's a lot of waiting game. But at the same time, looking at this, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I think it's giving me a little bit more information about how we would think about mental health consultation. And, in my mind, because I'm not this is not an area of my expertise, I thought it was like direct consultation, but actually it is sort of the partnership that the consultant have with the provider, and then they are the ones who are connecting with the family. So that's sort of a slowly, I'm learning that. So thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah, and I think Lisa's familiar with that delicate dance because in Colorado, there's a network of private funders, there's other agencies who have some ownership over that work. And so I think that's a familiar challenge, at least to Lisa and several other states who are figuring out what to do with their PDG dollars. And Lisa, I don't know if you have any advice for Kim on balancing that.
I don't think that there is a balance per se. We've all been in the contract writing phase, and if there's one thing we've learned from contracting, it's that you never get it right the first time. And so I say, even as you write your RFP, like even if it's a 5-year funding or 3 years subject to available funds, you can amend the scope every year. So focus on getting it out and learning, make them turn in like quarterly reports or a mid-year assessment, so that you can have as much learning as possible before you go into the next renewal. Iterate. That's the best you can do is iterate, because you could sit in a lab all day long, or you could come to 15 of these and you still won't get your first RFP right. I'm still making tweaks 5 years in. So you get a little smarter, the landscape changes, some of the players change. Yeah, contracts is always difficult. It's an ongoing challenge. Yeah. So sending all our good vibes.
Great. And thank you for putting those notes in the chat. anyone else have questions for Lisa while we have her? I know she's been an excellent resource for some other states. California and Texas have been using her quite a bit as they lift up their programs. Or anything else, Lisa, you want to share? I know you. One thing I would note about Lisa's work is that her position and most of her projects have been funded through PDG renewal grant over the last about 3.5 years. And it was a slow start, but now everything's really just blossoming in that last year. So that's been cool to watch. So it's doable, but I think there's some lessons learned, which Lisa shared some, but also just that really being patient and continuing to be really tenacious and pushing.
Yeah, I think if we have a couple minutes, Lindsay, one thing I might put up is the second to last slide. The health and mental health grants are on there, and that is a little different because it's not ECMH in the most traditional sense. We really did leverage some of our stimulus dollars to push out mental health supports for EC providers. So I say that because when you're building other systems, when you're thinking about what your next steps are, a conversation that we have all the time is you can be as prepared as possible on your side. You can have all the tools, all the letters of commitment, a robust data system, well-trained staff. And if your consultee is not ready, you will not make progress. And so really having a way to understand and, if possible, partner to address the mental health needs of the adults that we're hoping to partner with. So the health and mental health grants are this top row. We used $5.4 million. I'm saying that dramatically because wait for it. We used $5.4 million and basically wrote a Google form application, said what could be an eligible fund, gave this big menu of things that you, including like an adult cozy corner, right? Not really, but for breaks and such, a sub pool, all sorts of things that we thought would be valuable. And then boom, we opened it. We had to close it within 3 days because the applications exceeded our 5.4 million. And some of them are it's unfair to say our staff giggles, but you know, everybody needs some relief here and there. So some of them are like, we need a Peloton and we need an ice machine. But a lot of them were mental health counseling reimbursement, because as you know, a lot of our EC providers do not necessarily have positions that come benefited. Even if we have really nice, cushy benefits packages in this country, it usually does not come with a full subsidy for mental health if it comes with mental health coverage at all. So that was an option. A lot of people made use of like a full staff retreat day. Sometimes we did not award this. Sometimes that looked like, can we go to Top Golf? Like, no, you can't go to Top Golf. But we can bring in professional development. You can get lunch. Like these are federal dollars. There are rules. But within that, we tried to approve as much as met the mark, and every last penny of that was spent, and people continue to ask if we will do it again. We do not have the ability to open something like that again right now, but it has really given us a lot of data and insight into demand that for the most part we've been speculating about. I know they've put out some different studies in the last year or two. Walter Gilliam was attached to some of them in terms of what anxiety and depression looks like in our ECE providers, that those rates are climbing. But that doesn't tell you what your state is up against. It doesn't tell you what those folks who are already reaching out for consultation services or who are connected to a coach still need. So just one, we were all thrilled we could get this money like out into the community, but two, we got so much back on what needs look like at such a dramatic rate in 3 days. Like, I don't know if we've ever successfully collected data that quickly. And now we have something to go to our leadership with, to go to our representatives with, to start to build a case around what it looks like when we talk about workforce retention in licensed care. If we want a continuity of an adult in a child's life in that early period and we're building brains, then they can't be kicked out so that the adult changes every week and the teacher can't keep changing. And when they're in the same room, that relationship needs to be available, responsive, warm. We know all these things, and we also know that there are active barriers. So just naming that was something we can't replicate at this point, but was really beneficial to our bigger picture of planning. So if any of you are in a stage in which you might submit an application for more funds in the future or sort of shift your direction, this might be something that you want to explore to understand how ready those adults are and what you can do to sort of, even if it's reflective supervision groups, like what can you do to sort of move the needle so that your consultation program has the best success, so that your consultants have the best, are set up for the best possible success.
That's really helpful, Lisa. So from this group, are there other topics as we in the TA Center think about continuing this conversation? And after hearing our initial presenters from Lisa, are there other topics that you would like us to do a deeper dive on, or other ways of approaching this topic? Well, we've done our job. No, we'll continue to focus and support states on this, but as those questions or as thoughts around different types of programming or supports come up, just make sure you're reaching out to your TA specialist or to the center, so we can connect you to folks who might have some experience in that area or some additional resources to share. Because I know, Lisa, you've also done quite a bit of work in trauma-informed care. You mentioned the seedlings training for parents, but I also know there's the roots and branches trainings for mental health consultants, as well as the early care and education workforce. And I believe those trainings are being turned into on-demand opportunities versus in person.
Yes, so we, this is when Lindsay says things are on a time course. In 2020, we said, hey, we're going to offer seedlings, which is for families. It's 10 weeks trauma-informed, science-based curriculum. And then we launched branches, which was for EC providers. And then we really went for our consultant workforce audience as well. What does it look like for them to have sort of restorative processes, network with each other, remember their purpose, skill up on trauma-informed. They get that in their typical education, but how can we really get specific education for this group? So yes, we requested in 2020, by the end of our PDG funding, we need coursework to extend this. That was part of our sustainability plan. So we did two things. We got a Creating Safe Spaces, trauma-informed early care and learning settings, which is a 90-minute course for EC providers. They can get social emotional credit. And then we also created a director's trauma-informed organization. So both are on demand. There's like a 101 and a 201. Anyone can take both.